Our next presenter today is Mr. Albert Daniels from ICANN. Please welcome him to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a quick 2-minute or 1-minute video with sound, hopefully, from the beginning.
The internet connects over 3 billion people from all corners of the globe.
Indonesia.
Kenya.
Argentina.
By 2020, billions more will be online. But what helps keep the global internet stable, unified, and secure?
ICANN.
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 The Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers and its community of stakeholders from around the world. We help coordinate the top level of the Internet's unique identifiers. So, when you type an address into your web browser, you get to the right place. Why participate in ICANN?
We want our voice heard.
We need diversity.
Because I care about the future of the internet.
ICANN needs your help to maintain one internet for the entire world. Interested? Here's how you can get involved. ICANN's Newcomers program is the start of your journey. It begins at icann.org/newcomers. Here you'll find information on how to become an ICANN stakeholder, newcomer sessions, ICANN's online learning platform, ICANN Learn. Join today. Visit icann.org/newcomers or email us at engagement@icann.org.
Okay, first of all, thank you everyone for being here today. I think most of you may have been at the opening ceremony. You heard my comments about the value of the internet to economic and social development. I like that t-shirt. So, by a show of hands, how many people checked their WhatsApp as the last thing that they did before they went to bed? Show of hands. And be honest, 1 or 2 hands, the hands are going up slowly. Okay? Again, show of hands, how many people when they woke up in the morning realized that they fell asleep and the phone was somewhere on the bed and they didn't realize that they had fallen asleep but they were doing WhatsApp before they went to bed? Show of hands, nobody? Few hands going up slowly. I see some heads nodding. And of course, what was the first thing you did when you woke up in the morning? Show of hands. How many people checked and reached for their phone before they even got out of bed? Some hands went up. Okay. So I take it this thing called the internet is important to you it must be your business life or your education life. It can't just be for fun, right? It's something important that caused us to check our WhatsApp just before we went to bed and first thing when we woke up in the morning. But the last question is, how many of you, again by a show of hands, have ever contributed to any policy related to what happens with the internet in your country? Show of hands. Show of hands. Any country, 1 hand, the CARICOM Secretariat. Very good. Not even you, Raymond? Oh, okay, and Raymond Khan, the CCTLD manager. So the point I'm trying to make here is we claim that this thing called the internet is important to us, but yet still we don't make any effort as individuals or as Guyanese companies or Guyanese organizations to find out what is going on with the policies, how they are developed, and how they relate to our concerns and our interests here in the Caribbean and definitely in Guyana. I can say our in the Guyana because my parents were Guyanese, so Guyana is my home as well. I can stand up and sing the national anthem if you test me. All right, but really, even from a Caribbean, it's the same situation. We don't pay attention to what's happening, and then something happens in Europe or in the US, and it affects us nationally, and then we start crying. But the issue is we had the opportunity, and we have the opportunity to participate in policy development. But the problem is sometimes we don't understand how these policies are developed, what the framework is, and how to participate. So hopefully, by the end of my presentation, you will have some idea of how you can keep track of what's happening with internet policies that are developed within ICANN and how you can participate and contribute substantively to internet policy development. So what I'm going to try to do in about 25 minutes, I've been told, is to go through these 4 topics. What is ICANN, the ICANN ecosystem, the multi-stakeholder model, and the policy development. So the mission of ICANN is to ensure an open, secure, and stable internet. And within the whole framework of what happens with the internet, we have a very small focus on domain names and numbers, IP addresses. That is what ICANN focuses on. Other organizations do other things, but this is ICANN's focus. So first of all, we coordinate the allocation and assignment of domain names in the root zone at the top of the internet. What happens at .com, .org, .guyana, .cars, .hotels, and so on. We coordinate that and we manage that. And we also coordinate the development of policies with regard to those domain names. For example, the community at one point said, well, we need some new domain names. The old ones are boring. .com, .org, .edu. I mean, we need something more exciting. We need a .cars, a .ibm, a .perfumes, and so on. So then one person in the community says that they want .amazon. So the question then arises, who should get .amazon? Should it be Amazon.com that sells things over the internet, or should it be an organization from the Amazon region? Guess what? Who do you think answers that question? Do you think it's the ICANN staff? You answer that question. You, as members of the multi-stakeholder community, are the ones who will develop policy concerning how that particular situation would be resolved. And then that's an issue. I mean, we all know there's an Amazon region, and we all know that, you know, there's a company, Amazon.com. But that is just one example of a policy which you can have some impact on, but there could be similar situations related to your own country. So we also facilitate the coordination of the DNS root server. And what is DNS? What is a domain name system? We can easily remember Facebook.com and Google.com, or even, was it MOPT, that's Ministry of the Public Telecommunications, .gov.gy. Those things as human beings are easy for us to remember. But if you ask us to remember the IP addresses for the name servers for those websites, you know, you would start having all these post-it notes. Okay, this is Facebook's website, 192.275.something.something. It's difficult to remember. So this is why you have this system called the Domain Name System, the DNS. And ICANN manages that at the root, so there are issues related to how that whole system works. And of course, we allocate the IP addresses, the numbers themselves, and you'll hear a little bit more about, you know, how we actually do that. So we also collaborate with other bodies, you know, as necessary and as appropriate to make sure this whole thing works. So essentially, ICANN does not do this alone. The ICANN organization works with other organizations, like you've heard, the IETF, to ensure that this whole thing works together. So first of all, ICANN as an organization coordinates with our technical partners. The most direct technical partners that we work with are the regional internet registries that essentially hand out all of these IP addresses. So ICANN has the master list of all of these IP addresses, IPv4 and IPv6. And when it comes to Africa, when it comes to the Caribbean, when it comes to Europe and so on, in each case, ICANN deals with one of these regional internet registries. Afrinic, RIPE, ARIN, and LACNIC, and many others. And as you would see here, we also work with domain system operators, root server operators, and of course, as you've heard from Shernan, the Internet Engineering Task Force. So that is the first group of entities that ICANN works with directly to ensure that the internet operates. We also work with other partners, the Anti-Phishing Working Group, the Internet Society, United Nations, and many others. And what you should be starting to realize from those two diagrams is that there are many, many, many entities that all collaborate and all work together to ensure that when you reach for that phone and you hit that green icon for WhatsApp, or you hit your email icon, you actually get the information that you want to. But like I said, ICANN focuses on certain specific things. So what is this ICANN that we talk about? Sometimes before individuals fully understand ICANN, they believe that ICANN is a group of individuals who work for a company. That is not ICANN. ICANN has three very specific dimensions, three parts. The most important part of ICANN is you, the ICANN multi-stakeholder community. It is the ICANN multi-stakeholder community that has discussions, that develops policies, that eventually go all the way up to the ICANN board of directors, which is also representative of the multi-stakeholder community. What do we mean when we say multi-stakeholder? Government, business, end user, academia, technical community, and so on. That wasn't me, I didn't touch it. So that is what we mean when we say multi-stakeholder. So you are essential parts of the multi-stakeholder community. You discuss policy, you send it to the multi-stakeholder board. The members of the ICANN board are drawn from the multi-stakeholder community. It's not ICANN people, ICANN staff members who are on there. And after the ICANN multi-stakeholder board approves a particular policy, they then pass it to the ICANN organization, the staff like me, for implementation. So the only real time that the ICANN staff get involved in deciding, who gets that Amazon.com is after you have had a discussion, sent it to the board, after the board has decided, and then, goes across to implement. So when we talk about ICANN, when you talk about ICANN, you are actually talking about yourselves. So it's not about why didn't ICANN do this and why is ICANN doing that. It's about why am I doing this and why am I not doing that. So that is the most important thing that you need to understand about this whole ICANN organization. You are the most important part of the ICANN multi-stakeholder model. So you have the ICANN board. I already spoke about the board. You have some idea. And you have the ICANN organization, which is essentially the staff. And you have two types of ICANN staff. You have those that are involved in specific functional things, like the ones who actually keep the list of all the IPv4 and IPv6 numbers and the autonomous system numbers. And you have other teams like myself who are involved in what we call engagement. We have a group called Global Stakeholder Engagement where we cover the globe. And my responsibilities are for the Caribbean. And my job is very simple: to come to events like this, to speak to you as a group, or to speak to you over lunch or breakfast or over rotis or over drinks, and explain to you what ICANN is, what ICANN does, why it's important to your organization, your government, your business, and encourage you to get involved in what's going on. So this is the ICANN organization. These are the ICANN staff. And we implement the policies, and we make our best efforts to be open and transparent about everything that happens within the ICANN organization. So typically, you can go to the ICANN website, icann.org, and you can follow discussions that have been taking place on any particular topic. If you want to find out what has been going on this discussion with regard to .amazon, you can go to the ICANN website and you can find out, who's been involved in the discussions, who are the different parts of the community who've been making suggestions, what have they been saying. You can follow the transcripts and you can see everything that's going on. It's very open and transparent. So this multi-stakeholder model, let's talk about that for a little while. Generally speaking, when we take all of you, the entire global multi-stakeholder community, within the ICANN framework, you have two parts. You have what we refer to as SOs and ACs. SOs are supporting organizations. They're the groups that actually develop policy. And then you have the ACs, the advisory committees. They advise the SOs in the formulation of that policy. And between those two groups, everybody in the global multi-stakeholder community is essentially represented. So one way or the other, for example, if you're with a CCTLD manager, you would end up on an SO, a supporting organization for CCTLDs. If you were on the government, you would end up on an advisory committee. Or if you are an end user, you would end up on an advisory committee. So the whole idea is every one of the global stakeholders in the multi-stakeholder committee has a place where they can input, where they can discuss, where they can make contributions to policy with regard to the internet. The multi-stakeholder community is a volunteer community. I'm sorry, you don't actually get paid to be a part of the multi-stakeholder community. But sometimes if you are working hard, and we have examples of this here in this room. I know Raymond Khan was a fellow, and we have some other fellows. Bevel Wooding, was an ICANN fellow. If you are working hard, but you can't afford to attend one of the 3 global meetings that takes place within ICANN for the year, what ICANN will do as an organization is we will support your travel. So Raymond was what we call a CCTLD manager. He's managing the .gy. He made an application to ICANN to attend an ICANN meeting to understand better what's going on with CCTLDs. And what ICANN would do if you were successful with the fellowship program is we would pay for your airfare, we would pay for your accommodation and give you some small stipend so that you can attend a meeting in person and find out, what's actually going on. And the hope is that after people like Raymond and Bevel and others attend these ICANN meetings, they would then better understand where they fit in all of these SOs and ACs, and how they can then represent the interests of their local organization or their local company within this whole ICANN framework. The ICANN meetings are rotated around the different parts of the globe. The next meeting is going to be coming up soon in Abu Dhabi. I think I have a slide on that. And the 2 meetings after that are actually in our region. In San Juan, Puerto Rico, we're still keeping our fingers crossed that by 2018, San Juan would have had enough time to recover. If the meeting moves, anybody who has been approved to attend that San Juan meeting will be flown to wherever the meeting is. And the meeting after that is in Panama. So I encourage all of you who are interested in finding out more about ICANN, apply for the fellowship. You can say you came to ICT Week in Guyana, and drop me a line saying that you're applying. And if I remember you were here, I'll say, oh, yes. He was sitting in the front row. He had on this nice green T-shirt, and he was contributing a lot, and I will make a case if you show interest for your participation. I don't choose, okay, but I can say something about, names and people that I actually recognize. So I already mentioned that policy is developed by you, the community, so we can skip over that slide, and we already know that it's volunteers. So again, looking at those 2 broad groups, you see a little bit more of the breakdown of those groups, the advisory committees and the supporting organizations. Again, without trying to memorize everything that's up there, just understand that amongst those items that are listed, there is a place for anybody to fit into one of those SOs or ACs. Again, the T-shirts, sorry, they're right in front of me. Which organization are you guys from? In the yellow T-shirts, either of you, yeah. You're from? Is it a private company? Yes, okay. So the private companies would fit in under what we call the GNSO. Okay, anybody else? Let's see, let's play Stump the Panel. My friend there in the purple T-shirt who's writing furious notes. Where are you from? Who are you representing? An organization, a company, or? You represent a company. You also in the GNSO. Anybody from an entity which is not a private company? You're from Parliament, government. So there's a space in the Governmental Advisory Committee which represents the views of government. I'll take one last one. Nobody can stump me? I promise you that there's a place up there for everybody. Okay, gentleman is going to stump me. Industry groups, the same thing, the GNSO, because these are private sector, commercial, non-commercial. Anybody from corporate movement? Same sort of thing, representing private company. Anybody from academia in this room? Yes? I thought you said private company. Both. So typical thing in the situation. And I think, Lance can relate to this. Because our Caribbean territories are so small, you end up being the president of the Chamber of Commerce, the president of the Rotary Club, the activist for the Humanistic Society, and the sports leader, the team coach, everything. And we understand that. And the thing about it is, individuals from other parts of the globe, let's take an example. Let's take Latin America. They don't always understand that is our situation. And I can tell you of specific problems that happen in the ICANN community. And I'm going to use Lance. Let's say Lance goes up and he's going to be the representative for the at-large advisory committee, which represents end users. You'll have somebody from Latin America standing up and saying, no, Lance can't go because when we check his bio, we see that he was some big shot in the Chamber of Commerce. He represents the commercial interest. So how is it that you're saying that somebody from the commercial sector should be representing the interests of the end users? And now it's even worse. Where is he representing? The government. All right? So how can he represent end users, government, and commerce? And it takes us who understand the situation on the ground to go into that forum and say, you know what? Things are different in the Caribbean to other parts of the world. This is how it is. When you in Guyana, you're the football coach, the swimming coach, you're in the Chamber of Commerce, and you're at the university. End of story. And it takes more than one. So 5 of us go and we tell them that, and then eventually they get it. If we don't go, guess what's going to happen? Lance will not be allowed to participate because they will say, no, that can't work. Because he's from commerce, he can't represent government. So this is one of the reasons why it's important for us to actually participate. So again, you have the SOs, the ones that deal with generic domain names and the ones that deal with the country code domain names. My 20 minutes is up. Oh, there's somebody calling. All right, let's go. So here you see that you have in the advisory committees a space for end users. So anybody who's not from a university or not from commerce or not from an industry organization or not from a technical company, there is a space for you to fit in. That's what we refer to within the ICANN multi-stakeholder model as the at-large. And we have all these acronyms, ALAC. And ALAC must have ALSs, at-large structures. Okay? So there's a space for end users. The GAC, another one, Governmental Advisory Committee. If you are the official representative for the government of your country, again, guess who? Lance. All right? If you are the official representative, the GAC has a meeting room where all of the representatives of all the countries sit down. And it's fun to go to an ICANN meeting because you walk into that room and it's like the United Nations. Everybody speaks slowly and they're very respectful and they're very diplomatic and they're very polite. And you leave the GAC room and then you go to the at-large room and you'd swear that it's a fish market. Everybody is fighting. You see, he's smiling. Everybody, there's a different tone of the discussions. And then you leave there and you go to maybe one of the security rooms, the Security, Stability, and Advisory Committee, and it's no nonsense. We don't have time for diplomacy. We don't have time for fighting. We're just here to do the work. So, and going to an ICANN meeting, I don't think you have Carnival there, but you have Mashramani, is it? Yeah? Yeah, see, I know about Guyana, right? So, going to an ICANN meeting is like preparing for Carnival. There's some trainees there. You have to take your vitamins. You have to be ready. Because there are about 13 sessions happening simultaneously in a big hotel, big conference room, and you literally are running across the hall from the security session to the end user session to the GAC session and so on. It's a very interesting place. You learn a lot. You meet a lot of interesting people, some who have common interests to you and who you can exchange your concerns with. But the whole idea is you really need to be ready for this. And the thing about an ICANN meeting is that you are expected to play as hard as you work. So you are in sessions pretty much, from 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. You finish maybe about 5, 6 o'clock, and you are expected to go to the karaoke or to go to the socials and go on stage and sing and dance and all the rest of it, stay out till 1 o'clock in the morning and still find yourself back the next morning for the next important GAC session and so on. So it's an interesting place, and you get a feeling of fulfillment, as you go through it. Now, this is how ICANN covers the globe when it has to deal with numbers. We have numbers, and we give numbers to the entire globe, but we break it down by region. There are actually 2 regional internet registries which cover the Caribbean, ARIN, which covers North America and part of the Caribbean, and LACNIC, which covers Latin America and part of the Caribbean. Guyana actually falls under LACNIC, and I think you'll be hearing from Kevin Swift, who is a representative of LACNIC. Now, typically with these SOs and ACs, there is a very simple structure. You have the broad grouping of everybody who's in there, and then you have a sort of board, or what we refer to as a council for that section. So if we were talking about the GNSO and we're looking at industry groups and so on, you have all the representations, but then you would have a council at the top of the GNSO. So when you have a policy discussion, 20 minutes done, when you have a policy discussion, the discussion would take place at a general level, it would then go up to the council, and then the council would send it onwards to the board. And that is the only thing really you need to take away from this particular slide. So then the GNSO is like one big callaloo soup. You have callaloo soup in Guyana, yeah? Everything is mixed in, or you have a pepper pot. You put everything in there over the days. All right, so if you look at this slide, you will see that there's business users, commercial stakeholders, non-commercial stakeholders, and then you have your registries and so on. This is where a lot of the commercial and non-commercial entities actually fit in. The at-large deals with the end users. The GAC deals with government, and root servers and ESAC are really dealing with security and the root server system. So the last key area that I want to cover here is to just give you an understanding of the steps involved in developing policy within ICANN. And similar steps are followed by all three of the supporting organizations, the ASO, the CCNSO, and the GNSO. First, there must be something that you want to have a policy on. For example, should there be any new generic domain names? Or is it that .com, .org, .edu, and so on are enough? And are we happy with those? So the community stood up and said, no, these are too boring. And a few people said, no, we need new ones. So what happened? They identified that as an issue, and then they requested a preliminary issue report, and then they sent it out for public comment. Public comment is a common feature in the ICANN policy development process. A particular part of the community has a discussion, they come up with a draft report, they put that report on the ICANN website for 30 days, for 60 days, for public comment. So even if you have not been in the room during the discussions, you will see the draft report, and you can make a comment from Georgetown, from Essequibo, or from any part of the world on a policy that has been discussed. And then it goes back to after the policy has actually gone out. Did I skip a slide here? The policy development process actually, PDP, it starts. So a working group of these volunteers is put together, and then there's a charter. Okay, what policy are we discussing? What are the parameters? How are we going to work? Everything is set up, and then that working group goes out and it works. Sometimes the working group has face-to-face meetings. Most of the time they have virtual meetings. There's a conference call, you go to Zoom or you go to Adobe Connect, and you interact electronically, or you interact over a mailing list. And after those discussions, there's a preliminary report. It goes to the council, and then again there's some public comment. There's a further deliberation, and then it goes to the ICANN board. Okay, so we've come up with this policy, this draft policy for new domain names. The board will discuss it. They will ask for public comment, and then eventually there will be a final vote, and then yes or no, the policy will get implemented. And typically, that's how it works. So your input would either be at the initial stage of discussion or at the public comment stage. We just had a tremendous change with regard to how the internet is governed. There was something called the IANA stewardship transition. The United States used to be the one who had the final say with any change that took place at the top of the internet, .com, .org, and so on. Anytime somebody wanted to make a change, the ICANN staff had to put that change together and give it to the Department of Commerce of the US government for their final approval. 15 years, it was like that. But then there was a discussion that instead of having one government in the world perform this function, it should be you. It should be the multi-stakeholder community. So it took 2 years. There was a lot of discussion. All of those different SOs and ACs were discussing this, and eventually they came to the decision, yes, this is the new structure that will have oversight. So last year in September, the contract between the US government and ICANN was allowed to lapse, and you, the community, now have that oversight. Now, during the public comment phases for comments on that draft policy, there's an analysis of all of the fantastic comments from the Caribbean. How many comments do you think came from the Caribbean on this important thing of having oversight? Take a guess. Yeah, exactly that number. 0. 0. Literally. We did not as a Caribbean, you did not as Guyana, I did not as St. Lucia, actually make any comments publicly on anything that was going on. But afterwards I will come and say, well, I don't like the new situation, when I had the opportunity to participate. Yes, I may not have been able to travel to the meeting. Yes, I may not have been on the council. I may not have been in the room, but I did have an opportunity to follow what was happening and make public comments. So this is where we need to get up and start making our input known. So there are many different ways that you could actually get involved. You can attend one of these public meetings. You can take online courses to learn a little bit more about how things actually operate. And when it comes to the public meetings, you can either apply for the general fellowship, or if you are in one of those SOs or ACs and you are showing that you're volunteering and you're on, they also have special programs of travel support to get you to the meetings. The GAC has its own travel support for government representatives. And in addition to the Global ICANN Fellowship Program, there is also something for university students, where university students from the region where the ICANN meeting is taking place have priority and can apply to go to an ICANN meeting. The next 2 ICANN meetings after Abu Dhabi in our region, Latin America and the Caribbean. So Abu Dhabi is the next meeting coming up soon, the 28th of October to the 3rd of November. After that, we're still hoping to go to Puerto Rico. You can always go to the ICANN website and get further details on those. And pretty much that's it. It's easy to find information on ICANN. You go to the main ICANN website, icann.org. In the top right-hand corner, there is a search box. You can put anything in there. Fellowship, GNSO, SO, AC, policy, Guyana, anything you want to find out about within the ICANN community, you can put it into that search box. And of course, this is my email address, my name, albert.daniels@icann.org. I'm here for the week. Feel free to approach me during lunch, during the breaks. I mean, you'll get to the top of my priority list if you offer me some nice curry and roti. All right, so those who come with curry in hand, I will talk to you first. All right, but the whole idea is all of those partners, Shannon, Kevon, Stephen, and myself are here for the week, and we are here to actually serve you. So thank you very much for your attention.